Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum. We are back with another episode with my co-host Tom Reimer for Found Footage Fridays. Yay!
Yay! Still doing it.
Still moving right along.
You're not sick of found footage yet, right?
No. So the movie that we're talking about today is the 2011 found footage movie, The Tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about watching it, I watched it on Vudu by Fandango.
Is that where you found it?
Yes.
I feel like I saw it on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the one I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I watched this one on Vudu. So if you're not familiar, Fandango is like switching over to this like slightly streaming kind of situation. And it's called Vudu, VUDU. And you can log in and watch a lot of stuff for free with ads, but then there's other stuff that like you can't. Other stuff you have to pay to watch. But this one was one that was free, and I was able to just use I use Fandango to order movie tickets. So I just logged in with my Fandango credentials, and then I was able to watch it that way. So what did you watch it on? You said YouTube?
I think YouTube. It was just up there, which is like weird to find things just on YouTube. But
Was there ads?
There might have been ads, yeah.
Okay, I was just curious.
I forget, but yeah, I was surprised to find it there.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, would you describe it as a mockumentary? That was fun. I think I was just saying that it's sort of like a mockumentary or something like that.
Yeah, it's done. Yeah, and I'm going to actually comment on the way that it's done when we get to spoilers because I don't want to ruin the ending.
Okay. Well,
yeah, so this had, let's see. This came out in 2011. It has a 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
What?
And an 86% on the Google.
Okay, how many people rated it?
I didn't get a chance to look yet.
Is the director's parents and himself?
Everyone who was on set went and did one.
Not even everybody.
Not even everybody. So I'm going to look at it in a second and see. But so the synopsis is a film crew learns of a government cover-up about the abandoned train tunnels beneath the heart of Sydney and decides to go inside to try to find the truth. Very quickly, the group begins to realize that perhaps the cover-up was for a good reason.
Really good reason. Yeah.
Yeah. 7 reviews.
Okay. There you go.
On the thermometer, but it only got 50% from an audience score of over 500 ratings. That makes more sense.
That's a little more accurate. Yeah.
This movie was only an hour and a half. God, it felt a lot longer than that. Okay.
It's funny how many of these found footage films are exactly an hour and a half. Did you ever notice that?
It is weird.
1 hour and 28 minutes to an hour and 32 minutes. Like that.
That's the window.
4-minute window. Yeah, it's nuts how they figure that out. But it's a good length for these movies. Most of them, it is.
They don't need to go on too long. Yeah. No, I agree. Especially with the typical pacing of the way that they're done. It makes sense that they wouldn't be 3-hour-long movies, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you want me to give my rating first, or you want to give yours first?
You go first. I'll do the next one first.
Okay. So I'm going to give this 5 out of 10 tapes.
5 out of 10. Okay. I thought you were going to go higher on that. I don't know why.
Obviously, I will discuss why it's not higher. But yeah, I'm going to go with a 5.
Interesting. I am going to go with a 7.
Whoa. Okay.
10 tapes. Yep. 7 out of 10. That's not, that's, I definitely have some hesitation there. I'll explain, but it was solid. I would say a solid found footage film with flaws.
Okay. We're not as close as we normally are.
No, I like it. Let's see. I want to know why.
Yeah. So, I think my unspoiled, the best I can do, I think is, I'm trying to think of like so I like when we get into what is going on. I like this government conspiracy thing. I felt the characters were pretty believable. I actually was pretty happy with the ending. But I think my problem was the what's the best way to put it? Like the way that we move through the story as things unfold did not flow as well as a lot of other films like this do. And I
Yep.
kind of felt it was a little more not jumpy, like choppy. And so and I just had a hard time like being invested in what was happening. And there were only a couple of moments with this situation getting bad for them that I was genuinely like unnerved. But most of the
Yep.
time I was like kind of checking to see like how long I had been watching it.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's probably all I can say unspoiled.
I definitely had some. I actually had like a lot that I didn't like about it. It's sort of interesting. However, I still enjoyed watching the movie. I thought it was a good experience, but there was like a lot I wrote down, like didn't like that, didn't like that, didn't like that.
Yeah.
And then in the end, I still kind of was like, oh, I actually sort of like the movie. So I get what you're saying about the flow. I think I had problems with the flow more from the standpoint of like a traditional found footage movie that
Yes.
sort of veered off of what I want to
Right.
see in a lot of those movies. So
Yeah.
I guess that's sort of a flow thing. Without saying too much more, I don't want to give away what I'm talking about. The ending, I was okay with. There's something that I can't quite put my finger on with this movie that doesn't that gets in the way of it being like a truly great found footage movie.
I feel
Like
the same way.
So much potential.
Yes.
And then I was just like, it wasn't. It just missed in a couple of places.
Have you seen VHS 94?
I have. Yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with the clip or the first story. The one is Ratma.
I was thinking a lot about that.
I was, and I wonder sometimes when you see these things that could potentially have been influenced, and like in the case with like Rec and Quarantine, I didn't know that Rec existed. I thought Quarantine was the only movie, so that's the one I had seen first. It's like I wonder how much of a disservice that does me as a viewer, because that was all I could think about was the VHS 94. And I thought, and of course in that one, it's a smaller clip because it's just a piece of the anthology, but that was all I could think about for a majority of this thing. And I'm like, man, I wonder if that's where like the inspiration came from. But because I had already seen that, this didn't feel unique to me. And I was like, I bet I kind of messed myself up with that.
Even though this one came way before.
Even though it came first. Exactly. Yes. Because
so
it
which did you like better?
Did.
If you had to, did you like the tunnel? Did you like Ratma?
I know a lot of people like laugh. I loved that clip from 94. Actually, VHS 94 is my favorite of the franchise.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. And I think the other thing is too, because I did have such a problem with pacing and the like flow, the Ratma one is shorter.
Yeah.
You know, so then I was like, and that is not to say that this movie, my cat's stretching. So
the camera's possessed. I've seen this in some of our movies before. when you leave the room, your camera turns and faces.
Yeah. Lights flash and there's something behind me that only you can see because you're looking at the screen. Yeah. So like this had moments that were really good, but I just like, and I'm used to found footage being kind of slower. It always takes time to build the story, and then it's usually the endings are like nuts. But I don't know what it was about this that just bugged me as far as like I just like kept waiting on myself to be into it, and it really didn't happen until the end.
It's not about the quality of the production at all. In fact, as I will explain, I actually see that a little bit as a negative with this movie, in that the production was so good, I thought, in some places, that it's not exactly always a positive for me in found footage. Sometimes I like it to be a little rougher.
More raw, yeah.
You know?
No, I agree.
Let me explain exactly what was going on in this. I'll talk a little bit more about what I didn't like about that.
Yeah. I don't, it sucks because like, if people were to ask me like, oh, would you like recommend this movie? I always tell people if something is free, you should watch it if you want to watch it. If you have an interest, you should see it, because there are people who love this movie, like love it. And it wasn't a love for me, but anyway, but
I think because there seem to be so many people that do love this, when you really start investigating, you almost set it up to be a lot better than it. And I was expecting it to be a lot better. Maybe that's unfair. Yeah, and that's probably not fair to this movie, especially because there's so many of these that you watch and you've never heard anything about, and then you're just like pleasantly surprised. I think I would have been pleasantly surprised by this movie if I hadn't known or heard so much buzz about it, which it's not fair to the movie, but it's what happened.
Probably fair. That's a really good point. I'm going to change my rating.
No, you can't.
I have to. I feel like you've already made such compelling points of things that I didn't consider, and it has been like a week.
You should wait though, because I'm going to say some negative stuff too that I.
All right, I'll hold off, and then I'll tell you at the end if I fully decided I need to change it.
Okay.
Okay.
I will say, just in response to one other thing you said, like there are some chilling scenes in this, like, and some like individual shots that are scary, that are good, which I'll talk about. So.
Yeah. So let's jump into spoilers.
Okay, so it's a mockumentary, right?
Yes.
And it has this feel of like almost like a true crime documentary or something you'd watch on like Netflix, like high level production.
Yes.
So much so that like the actors bothered me, and it wasn't because they weren't good actors. They were good actors, but it was like they were too good. It looked like I was watching something like overproduced. There was a lot of stuff they did with soundtrack, like the opening credits. It just felt like you don't really see a lot of that kind of stuff. Sound effects, things like that with found footage, but the actors themselves were just like too good, too smooth. They almost look like reenactors. Like when you watch one of these things.
Yes.
Like, am I watching the reenactment or am I watching the actual footage?
The actual thing, yeah.
It sort of felt like that, which isn't good for found footage, I don't think.
I think there are definitely some higher budgeted found footage movies that I've enjoyed and really loved. But I know exactly what you mean. The beauty of found footage is its simplicity. It's like, we don't know who any of these people are. We've never seen them before. Like, you're doing all these practical effects as opposed to these bigger budget things. And I think, and this man, that actually might be why I felt like, so I had this feeling that, like, there's this buildup in the very beginning. We have the two main people that are talking about what has happened. Like, from the beginning, we're talking about everything. And they're trying to build up these friendships, these relationships, which is normal. I didn't have a problem with that, except that it didn't stick for me. Like, I wasn't invested in the relationships. I didn't care. I wasn't like, and I don't feel that way often, to be honest. Like, it's usually pretty easy for me to connect to characters as long as there's some effort put in. But I think, to your point, I think because it felt so polished, that made it seem disingenuous. And so it didn't feel like I didn't care about this weird sort of relationship with these two people or these friendships. Like, I wasn't invested in any of it. And so then when things kind of got weird and bad things started to happen, I was already a little bit disconnected from them as people, which I think that's why I think what you said is the exact reason that I kind of struggled with that.
And here's another thing that I don't like with found footage, which sort of take away, it's really anticlimactic. If we know who the survivors are at the beginning of the movie, it is the worst genre of film to know who the survivors are at the beginning. And you sort of take away, and there are only 4 characters in this movie.
Only 4.
And at the beginning which 2 survive.
That's true.
Is, that's tough. True. Like, it's kind of like, okay, it gets to a point where it's like really dramatic, and there's only, essentially 2 of them left. So that was tough. Not my favorite. I've seen it work in some. I can't think off the top of my head. I've seen it work before, but I think you can't know who everyone is that makes it. Like that was the problem with this.
Because I think a better way to have done it would have been to show the footage and then show them at the end once we already know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're talking about, where it's been done before and it works. It works when it's not the very beginning.
Right.
And like you, because as soon as we see our main group go and like they're the ones that's exactly what I thought. I was like, okay, well, these are the only two that make it out. Like, like to your point, like right away.
Yeah, you can take a deep breath. You're not like, okay, who's gonna make it out of this one?
Yeah, you're just expecting something to happen with these other two specifically, and then because they do try to give you these moments later, with the one guy that she has like a weird relationship with, he's like the boss or something. I can't think of his name, but like they try to give you these moments of hope with him, but we already know, so those moments don't work because we already know he doesn't make it.
No, and I mean, and so she is basically a desperate sort of journalist. Yeah. And she'll do anything to get her story. And so she lies to the entire crew to get them down there in the tunnels. There are all these rumors that there's something in the tunnels. I feel like that would have been a good tagline for this movie on the poster. Like, there's something in the tunnels, like at the bottom of the poster. But so she gets them all down there. And first, I have a question, actually. One of them, is his name Tangles? Is that the guy's name?
The guy with the curly hair?
Yeah.
That's his nickname.
Tangles.
Right?
I don't know. I couldn't tell. I didn't know if that was what that was in reference to, or if it was.
It's because he had curly hair.
Was it Tingles? And I was just sure. Sorry, that's a dumb question.
Yeah, no, it was just, but I think he was the only person that called him that. Wasn't it just that one guy that called him that?
I don't know. He's shouting his name throughout half the movie. He was shouting Tangles' name. So
I know, but I think that was another attempt to make you connected to the relationship between these people, and it didn't work. It just sounded silly.
No, just that sort of was dumb. One thing that was great, which is tough to do, is that because it was this documentary style movie, they did splice in a lot of video from different sources like street cameras and what else, like a lot of security cameras and then like interviews with a lot of different people, which is really cool. So all of that, phone calls, 911 calls, YouTube videos of the tunnels, which are what they saw to get them go down there in the first place. So it wasn't just handheld footage, which is still the best found footage in my mind, but it's good. It was good to see them utilizing a lot of different types of filmmaking. Very, very creative, I thought.
Well, and you know what I do think was done well is the water storyline.
Yes.
So the reason for our movie was a solid reason. Like, it wasn't one of these like fleeting things where it was like, oh, we're just going to do this just because, and we're going to pretend there's a reason. Like, this had a solid reason. You had a character that genuinely had something she was trying to prove, which is all adds to the reason. But the whole like water system thing, and then like talking about like the homeless living under there, but them saying that like nobody was down there, all of those kind of things. I actually really liked those parts of the story.
Yeah, I feel like that could really happen. Yeah, like just like the government hiding something like that. Like,
yes,
it's really similar to like the idea that the government's hiding like aliens or something like that. It felt like along.
And this like, so because some of the most like one of the scenes that really got to me, like that just made me feel like this heavy, sad, like unsettled feeling, was the bunks when it showed the beds from where because they had converted it into this like whatever it was, like a shelter or whatever.
World War II, right? Like a bomb shelter.
Like a bomb shelter. And then like they but when it showed that like these places that like that was so haunting to me. Like there was something so great, like to your point, this was like watching a documentary. Like you were watching this thing about the homeless or whatever. And so like that scene actually really made me uncomfortable. Like it just felt sad and heavy from that one thing.
And there were some there were some really tense moments too, like when they're picking up voices and whispering, on the guy's sound equipment. Like that was great. That was solid
Oh,
stuff.
after she hits the bell.
Love that sort of
Pretty
stuff.
good. That was good. Yeah.
So there was a lot that was sort of believable. There was a lot of that sort of split second, something caught in the frame sort of thing you see in found footage a lot.
The camera gets dropped.
The camera gets dropped and then moved when they turn away and aren't looking. And then really, really cool. One of my favorite moments in the movie, really sort of chilling, was when that whatever it was eating the dude in the water, and just sort of like quietly hunched over him, munching on him. And they zoom in, you just see his eyes like glowing.
And that's it,
in the night vision. Yeah. And where there wasn't like a lot more to
that
it,
was good.
But that was really solid. But it just, and then there were moments like I mentioned before with some other found footage movies that really pull me out is when there's like unnecessary, and this happens because it is a documentary or supposed to be, so I sort of get it in this case. But like when there's just like random like creepy soundtrack, like
oh yes, where it's been spliced and music is added in.
It's not, like I want my found footage like just the footage and nothing else. But there's like a drum beat or something, and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But it really, another thing that I really liked, and probably is why I rate it a little bit higher, is that it really plays on the fear of like underground spaces and claustrophobia. Not as well as some other found footage movies that we've talked about before. What is the one? They're backpacking in Europe or something. Is it Something Below?
As Above, So Below.
As Above, So Below. Great
That's
one.
one of my. Oh, I love that movie.
That one's great. Was that one of your top 5?
It is.
Yeah. That one's great.
It also makes a recommended list away from not just found footage, but horror in general, because a lot of people have not heard of that film.
Yes, and they should. That's like one that's ridiculous if you watch this genre and you're not watching. But maybe that's why we did not like this one as much. After watching that, this is not as good. It was still solid. And then I don't know. So at the end, I felt it was already pretty anticlimactic because we know these two get out.
We already know.
But it was wrapped up in a nice little bow at the end. Probably too nice of a bow, I thought.
So one of the things that I did like about, I'm going to say creature, my guess is it's a humanoid something, right? Like
something. Yep.
I think, and so like one of the things that I did really like, and I think this is so smart in general, because, and I know I've expressed this before, I have very strong opinions that like less is more. And when you're talking about something like this and you see just enough to spark that imagination and get those wheels turning, each individual person has already made up in their mind what this thing looks like. And that is way more terrifying than you deciding for the viewer what it should look like. Yep. And I think that made me really uncomfortable. Like when the first, like you said, that shot in the water was very well done.
Yep.
And I love that it kind of starts out like, disorienting, like you're not really sure what you're looking at for a second, and then it gives you just enough that you can see what's happening. You see this thing, and then like the idiots that people are in these movies, they make these noises and it distracts it, and then we kind of go on from there. But
lots of heavy breathing,
lots of it, gasping. I you know what? I've never been in a tunnel being chased by some humanoid monster thing, so I don't know that I wouldn't be able to be super, super quiet. But sometimes when these things happen, I'm like, come on, like you have no survival instincts.
Well, and if you're running from something, are you also like still filming it as you're running? Or if you're fighting, like there's scenes where they're like wrestling with it and they're like filming it as they're wrestling like underwater with it, and you're like, all right.
Come on, man. But I think like, I definitely think that I wasn't too mad at the ending. So typically, found footage, there's always a reason we have found it, right? So like people usually are not alive. which I'm fine with. I really am. Like, I don't care that everybody dies. I'm fine with that. So
it's like 90% of found footage.
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
It is.
Maybe I should start doing this.
Stop. What a pain in my butt. Okay. Are you done stretching? He lays back there because the heat from my fan from my laptop is back there. She's like, oh, warm.
Okay.
And I think my battery is warm too. It is. But anyway, so I digress. So I actually was surprised that it didn't bother me that there were survivors, because at first I was expecting myself to be frustrated by that, because it's just, like, but you know what? Okay, this is another side note off of that. Like, this is just what came in my head. You know what I would have liked to have seen that I think could have made the ending a little bit stronger if we had seen more than one.
Yes. So that's actually a question. Was there only one? Is that
I don't know, but I don't know.
And I'm conflicted in that, similarly, like, you don't want to show too much, and that was great, but there also, like, wasn't enough information on just what it even was. Like,
yeah, you're like, just send some people down there with some guns and night vision and kill this one problem. But what would have been a cool shot is, as they're leaving the darkness, if all of a sudden we didn't see everything, but we saw a bunch of eyes, that would have been enough to be like, oh shit, we got to move out this city. Like,
there were some continuity problems with the monster, if that's possible. Also, like, as far as like the capabilities or strength of the creature, there are scenes where like he like tore the security guard from like a standing position, like literally, like it looked comically almost impossible, like he was like the Hulk or something pulling him away. And then in another scene, they're like easily batting the monster away, like while they're filming it, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and there were actually some with the lighting situation too, because one of the things they tried to say was that it couldn't be in the light, but then it took that other guy when the light was on it. Like, I had a hard time, like, I was like, okay, so, and I remember thinking that. I was like, he normally lays further over. Enough. Goodness. Just gonna be like all the way over here by the time.
No, what's gonna happen? Okay, so this is a found footage movie. What's gonna happen is it's gonna turn this way, and then it's gonna turn this way, and then when it turns back this way, there's gonna be a dude standing right there.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
I was on a live one time, not that long, like recently, and I just, because I can see my doorway right here, and my son's room is like right here, and like I just see this like little head, and I'm like, what is?
I thought you were gonna say the door slowly just creaked.
It was just my son getting out of bed to see what I was doing, because I was in here laughing because I was on video, and but like the way that it's like, you see like his little hand just like comes out, just like, it was so creepy. I was like, what the fuck? And turned around, I was like, go to bed. Like, freaking me out. Anyway, yeah, so they had these weird, there were some consistency issues, because the lighting, like, it was any form of light. It started out that it couldn't be in light at all, and then all of a sudden it took that guy when there was light at first, and I was like, what? So yeah, you're right, there was inconsistencies there.
It's not like Gremlins, like he can't ever be in the light or he'll die. It's just he doesn't like the light. He's light sensitive. Like
light sensitive. But at first it was no light. At first it was this overreaction to light. And then the second time was like, it's worth it. And he just like grabs that guy.
Yeah, so there was that kind of stuff. And then it had a lot of buildup, and then just like actually a few we've talked about recently, sort of just suddenly we're over. I did like at the very end how that last scene is. I didn't realize that was going to be them on the 911 call, so that was kind of cool. The 911 call at the beginning of the movie was them. At the end of the movie, that was fine. I was okay with that. But yeah, there's
notice how many people like didn't give a crap that they were there.
Okay, that's a huge people like staring.
There's like this guy gushing blood all over the subway floor, right? Or whatever it's called. And like these people are screaming for help. Everyone, they're in this panic. They drug him out of this space. Like, and everyone's just like, no, gotta go to work. Like,
I mean, okay, so as someone who's like grown up in and around Boston, I mean, there are times where you'll be on the subway and there's stuff happening and everyone's ignoring it. Like, so But I have a feeling if something like that happened, even even here in Boston, there'd be people stopping to check on the situation. Okay. But yeah, that was really suspicious. It was also like really empty. There were people there, but it was pretty empty for like a large
for what it was.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I was just amazed at like how many people and what's really crazy is as loud as they were, no one even looked. Like that was the thing. Like all the people who walked beside on the other side of the wall things or what columns or whatever, like all those people didn't even look.
And she's actually screaming like, "Help him!
Help him. Yes, yes.
Oh, so it wasn't that another thing? Like the guy who's being interviewed admits he didn't know he was dying. His friend, the one who survives, was like, I didn't know at that moment that he was dying, or I would have done more to help him or something.
Oh.
And it's like, you didn't? Like he was lying there, not breathing.
Yes. He is kind of a jerk, like character wise. Like if I'm just
saying, all are though. They all sort of are.
That's true. But if I'm gonna sit down and do this documentary about these two people that I worked with dying, I'm not going to be talking about the sexual potential relationship between. Like, I thought it was weird how he harped on and on. And I'm like, are you upset? Did you have feelings for him? Like, what are you, I don't understand.
I thought that's where it was going. I thought like one of them had been in a relationship with her or something. I was like, am I supposed to care about that?
That was my thing too.
It never came back. It was just like a throwaway at the beginning of the movie.
It never mattered at all.
I mean, okay, let's be fair. I'm not watching found footage for like the love triangles and the
But if it's going to be in there, at least finish the thought. Cool. It was very strange.
This is a question for you and for our thousands of viewers. Is there? Can you think of found footage that has like a big romance angle to it? Crickets.
I watched a found footage movie that did have a love triangle in it.
What was it?
Open Water 3, which we're going to probably do later. I think we talked about doing that one. Because it's about a couple and the brother of the boyfriend, and they go on this trip. And then like it tells you learn this very early. This isn't like a huge spoiler, but it is consistently an issue throughout the entire thing until the very end of the movie. Yeah.
I can only think one, it's not a love triangle, but I know of found footage that's on our list to watch at some point, potentially, where it's a first date. The whole movie is a first date. So
it's on is it one I haven't seen?
Crone Woods. Yep.
Okay, it's one. Yeah, that's one I haven't seen.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't know. Like outside of like established relationships that don't mean anything later. You know what I mean? Like, it's me and my girlfriend going on this thing, and then that's it. You know what I mean? That's it.
It's definitely not a common theme in this subgenre.
It's like the only thing that it doesn't, because found footage is a subgenre of horror, but it has subgenres that branch off. It's so many. Yep. But you're right. Yep. That's interesting. Yeah. So Open Water 3 is called, what's it called? Cage Dive, I think. That is a love triangle that is consistently an issue.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I will be curious though if there's some. There's probably some I'm not thinking of, obviously, but
yeah.
Comment below if you
tell us if there's like please.
So yeah, that's the tunnel, right? Do you have any other big thoughts on this one?
No, like I said, if you can watch it for free, you should. If you like found footage, there's a really big chance you'll watch this and absolutely love it. It wasn't a hit for me. I can't believe, listening to all the things you said, you rated it a 7.
Now I'm conflicted. Now, see, the reason I told you not to bring down your rating because I was considering bringing down my rating.
Yeah.
But I feel like I have to stay with what I said.
I'm trying to think because was it Blackwell that you gave a 7?
Yeah. But yeah, so okay, is it fair to say? I mean, I obviously like Blackwell better than the tunnel.
That's kind of my point.
Yeah.
I'm like 7 might be too nice because
I'm really awful at this. I don't like keep track of what I've rated, so it's more of like just in the moment what
What
I'm
it feels
thinking.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, you rated Blackwell a 7, and you gave Ghostwatch a 6.
Yeah, I
And
like
a
this better
half
than
or a
I like
6.
this better than Ghostwatch probably.
What?
I
Come
do.
on.
Yeah, I do. I liked
Yeah.
it better. I like
Yeah.
the setup for. I think Ghostwatch was way more is original. It's like you can't be more original than that sort of a setup. But this is just
Delivery
this
wise.
was a little. This was scarier. It had scarier moments. I thought.
I do think the story was the strength. The start of the story was the strength. And then I think that they made very smart, minus the inconsistencies, choices with what we saw visually from this thing stalking them in the tunnels. I think they did a really good job. I really do think the ending would have been way more just like packed full of punches if they had panned out and we had seen that the tunnels were in fact infested with these things and not just one thing, you know, or just one creature, whatever it is. Because to your point, it never says that there's just one, but we only see one at a time. And it would have been a lot more scary to see like a bunch.
You're making me really think that this should be like a 6 or a 6.5 probably, but it's going to be a 7 with an asterisk next to it.
Okay.
My final answer.
I'm going to stick with my 5.
A big part of it is like, but how do I feel about the whole experience when I'm done watching it? What did I think? And
yeah, that matters.
At the end of the movie, I was like, okay, it was good. It was good. It was good.
Yeah. And I was like, why do so many people love this one? So it definitely hit different for us.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's our Found Footage Friday on The Tunnel.
Tune in next week while we talk about what are we watching? Is it Followed? Is that what it's called? We always get the name wrong. Followed. Totally different movie.
Yeah. This is one that Tom had seen. I had not. Okay. So I watched it this is my first viewing will be for our next episode.
And I rewatched it, so I can't wait to hear your thoughts.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, so that's it for this one. So come back next week, watch us talk about Followed. And have a good weekend, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye, everyone.